Ladies and gentlemen, Careless Juja proudly presents Legend of the Boar Knight!
Chapter 1 Legend of the Boar Knight. Once upon a time, in a hole in the ground, there lived a boar. Not a nasty, dirty, smelly boar, but a proud and just creature of honest nature. The boar's name was Nathaniel, and coming to his 115th day of being alive, he was finally an adult, ready to explore the great and mysterious world beyond his home in the village of Boar's End. It was on this day that Nathaniel nuzzled his family goodbye, picked up his blade, a family heirloom known as Swinelith, donned his armor, the pauldron of asymmetry +5, put on his magical cape of rat summoning, and then ventured off into the forest to seek bold new adventures, picking up truffles along the way. Oh, what? Is the music already done? Well, that was short. Oh, I'm on. Right. Chapter 2 The Woods, the Witch, and the Wardrobe Malfunction. After a few hours of walking through the depths of the mushroom forest, just beyond his home at Boar's End, Nathaniel found himself deep in the midst of a strange, misty clearing. The further Nathaniel seemed to tread. Now, of course, the difference between farther and further is generally determined by whether you're speaking of a physical distance or a metaphorical one. For example, in The Lord of the Rings, Samwise Gamgee says,
"If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been."
Now, he said farthest because he was speaking of a physical distance from the Shire. So you see, Nathaniel is traveling farther into the woods. But I suppose he is going further in his journey. Well, anyway, the further Nathaniel seemed to tread, the more thick the deep colorless fog became, until finally he came across a small garden of bones, next to a little wooden hut that had long been warped by the humidity and the mold buildup associated with living in a foggy, mushroom-filled forest. It was probably not to code. Mustering up all his courage, Nathaniel slowly approached the hut to ask for directions.
Oi, who goes there?
Nathaniel snorted politely.
I knew that, I was just teasing you. I heard of you and your family. Who, me? I'm just a lonely little witch. You can call me Lucy Longlegs if you insist on a name, though. You heard of me too? What? No, them rumors are all hocus pocus. At least that one. I only eat human meat. Children, mostly. Besides, I knew you was coming and have something very special to offer you, my young boar knight. Some insight into your lineage, and even a glimpse into your very future. Well, that rumor is true. In exchange for my help, I'll need something from you. I want some of those hoof scrapings of yours. What? It's for a brew. A really nice one. Only affects vegans.
To which Nathaniel looked puzzled, but ultimately obliged. Chapter 3 An insensitive prophecy of sorts. From inside of the witch's hut, the following things could be seen. Some broomsticks, spiderwebs, a burning fireplace, a freshly baked lemon poppy seed cake with vanilla icing, a black cat, glass vials filled with unidentifiable contents that were clearly labeled in really illegible handwriting, a table, 2 chairs, a red crystal ball, a witch named Lucy, and Nathaniel the Boar Knight. As swirling shadows and the fresh scent of lemon goodness filled the room, Lucy began to tell the Boar Knight his prophecy.
You're adopted. You actually don't come from a long line of boar knights, but it's okay. You're actually the last descendant of a long line of heroic swine that throughout time has kept the land free of evil, Your parents, known as the Belmontesquieu, really loved you and entrusted your parents, the adoptive ones, with raising you while they went off to fight the most evil creature in all the land, your hunted abomination who races every 100 years to feed on the blood of the living and create early morning culinary masterpieces from their flesh. Cook Dracula the Butcher. Pretty crazy, I know. While they were they were not able to vanquish him. Your parents were able to force Cook Dracula into 113-day sleep. Well, I'm not entirely sure how that works, but I know that it was at the cost of their lives. Speaking of lives, though, your calling in life, Nathaniel, is to journey throughout the land of Bardia, rid it of any evil you encounter, and vanquish the evil cook forever, using your magical sword, the Swineling. That will be your legacy.
Chapter 4. An 80s training montage. After the prophecy was repeated a few more times with more and more excessive details and less coherency, Nathaniel thanked Lucy the witch for her time and bid her farewell. Lucy offered one last parting gift, a magical potion that would transform Nathaniel into the most talented and renowned sword swine that ever lived.
I've actually had some of his stuff before. It's not that bad.
However, upon drinking the potion, he found himself suddenly in front of a sepia-colored castle, next to an old grisly-looking swordsman with a silly beard and a set of binoculars.
Hark, swine, you stand before the shade of old Varl, master swordsman and legendary werebear of old Boletaria. Oh, how polite. And it seems you're Abel Montesquieu, judging by that blade you hold. Well, you're actually in a dream. No, more like a dreamlike ghost world within a dream. Only anything that happens here will also happen to your body in the real world. So don't go jumping off a cliff or anything. That'd be stupid since I just told you would die. The black wind howls. A clear sign that the world tendency has shifted. Perhaps you will need my help after all if the world is to survive the coming darkness. So I will train you, Nathaniel, in the subtly gratifying sword arts. But it won't be easy. Most of it is in the footwork.
And so Nathaniel began training with Varl, the master swordsman, and spent like 20,000 pig years in this dreamlike ghost world within a dream, Inception, and woke up about 15 minutes later, a master sword swine, after of course besting a shadow Darth Hog version of himself in single combat. Chapter 5. Some fates worse than death. As Nathaniel awoke a master sword swine, he found himself amidst the plains of incessant optimism. A daunting place to be, for sure. Nathaniel journeyed through these plains for what seemed like an accursedly cheer-filled eternity, forcefully skipping ever closer toward the Dragon Coast. I guess you could say he was now on a dragon quest. Probably the 5th one ever attempted. Chapter 6. The Hard Sell, Part 1. As the grudgingly glee-filled day came to an end, the Boar Knight soon sought refuge inside the shelter of a nearby cave, and was surprised to find himself in what seemed to be some sort of bizarre shop, filled with trinkets, penny whistles, costumes, happy masks, not so happy masks, weapons, explosives, food wares, and canisters of whipped cream. For some reason.
Shh! It's a secret from everybody.
As the greasy, scruffy-looking gnome at the counter began to speak, Nathaniel silently wondered how much longer could the shop stay in business if it encouraged its patrons not to speak about its existence.
Hey there, little guy. I want to sell you something. We got monkey's paws, Majora masks, pixie sticks, whips, holy water, and Eskimo CDs, but bombs, baby's tea, magic mushrooms, and even some trashy fanfic. fantasy armor. You know, like Merlin, the magical tax evasion auditor, or Morgan, the fabled CEO who kicked through the glass ceiling in high heels. They're the heroes from that popular new game, you know, CNC, Cubicles and CEOs. No? Anyway, buy something, will you?
Nathaniel nodded and politely browsed the shop to avoid the bleary-eyed stare of the shopkeeper, knowing for certain that he would not be purchasing anything there. Despite these feigned efforts, Nathaniel could feel the eyes of the shopkeeper boring into the depths of his very soul. Boring. Chapter 7, The Hard Sell, Part 2.
Hey, isn't that the Swinelick? The amazing holy avenging Rox's sword of super sticking it to cook Dracula? Then that makes you one of the Belmontesques. You're like a legend! A tasty little four-legged legend here to save the world from the coming darkness. Not to be mistaken with the going darkness I see every time I don't like what my wife cooks for dinner, but... Oh, yeah, anyway, so, for saving the world, I'll offer you a 5% discount. What? That's a cost!
Despite clearly not being at cost.
Whoa! Hold it right there, Mr. Narrator. Let's get one thing straight. I am overtaxed, and that's why I moved my little shop out of the city
The stingy shopkeeper did not really offer anything of value.
Nothing of value. You know what, little piggy? Just to prove this supposed narrator wrong, I'm gonna give you something. Here, take this. It's a magic shoehorn that you can use to repel dragons and force them into caves from which they can't get out of. You'll need it to face off against the Chef of Darkness and his orc army. Yeah, well, that's sort of an exaggeration, but he is currently playing host to an orc army. He is a chef and all, but in a few more days, nights, once his full powers are restored, he'll be sending him home from his castle, full of food and exhausted on that turkey they have there in their stomachs. But what do I know? I'm just a common Joe from the town of AC/DC. Don't worry, nobody's heard of it, because the town got retconned from the story.
Chapter 8, A Pig in Sheep's Clothing. The next morning, Nathaniel journeyed the last few miles to the quaint village of Porkalore, wearing a cheesy mustache disguise he'd been given by Joe the shopkeeper, who, as it turns out, had a very friendly wife. Upon reaching Porkalore, Nathaniel found himself in the presence of humans for the first time in his life. That weren't either ghosts or witches. Genuinely curious, Nathaniel nobly shuffled to their market square to see what goods they might have to offer, and smelled the seductively potent aroma of curry. How does one shuffle nobly? Anyway, enticed by the promise of exotic cuisine, his little snouter began to snot. First 1 dribble, 2 dribbles, 3 dribbles, 4. Pretty soon, his mustache disguise was on the floor. That sounded awful. I really should stop trying to rhyme. Perhaps another time. No. Anyway, as I was saying, now that it was clear to everyone that Nathaniel was a boar, the hungry and often greedy stomachs of men began to notice what they perceived as a meal on legs walking towards them. As their intentions were quickly made clear, and as Nathaniel realized that his secret human identity was compromised, a chase scene took place throughout the town. I would compare it to the one in Indiana Jones. You know, the one where everyone is jumping through fruit stands, rooftops, flatbeds, and where that one talented swordsman gets shot. It was just like that, only with Nathaniel and his magical cape of rat summoning in place of Indiana Jones. Chapter 9, Before It Was a Thing. Nathaniel was able to lose his pursuers by running into his spooky old mansion on the edge of town. But as the initial fear of being pursued wore off, it was soon replaced when he noticed a tall and brooding swordsman with glasses looming over him, breathing heavily on the back of his neck.
Boo! Sorry about that. Eat you? Why would I do that? I don't eat pork. You wouldn't understand my self-imposed dietary restrictions or my stylish thick-rimmed glasses, but just you wait and watch. One day, they shall name a township after me. Faralanzar Williamsburg. Or maybe just Williamsburg for short. Because you see, I'm the best swordsman that will ever be. Yes, I really am the best swordsman, but I wouldn't expect you to know that. You're just a talking sow. Varl of Boltla Terrarium? Of course I know who that is. I have a t-shirt somewhere, but he's nowhere near as good as me. Maybe I just haven't gotten to Castlevania yet. Thought of that? It's pretty hard to get my fixed-gear bicycle up that steep mountain the castle sits upon. But if you're so sure you're the best sword master in the land, I propose a gentleman's duel, complete with some sweet indie background music from an artist you've probably never heard. Careless Juja? Told you. Touché!
As the epic fight to see who would be the ultimate sword master began, with the wrong words I might add, it's on guard. The glasses came off and the rats that were terrorizing the ladyfolk and not quite ladyfolk of Porkalore were immediately unsummoned and returned to their homes within the Plain of Cheese. Plain of Cheese? Good God, this story. Chapter 10. Opposites repel, but ultimately ally. As the fight for sword mastery continued down the hall, up the stairs, through the window on the second floor balcony, to the wall on the opposite balcony, up the ladder to the loft, through the roof, to the rim of the chimney, through the air while gracefully falling off the roof, on top of the onlooking carpenter that both sword masters landed upon, through the trendy shops, and up and down the streets of Porkalore about a dozen more times, it slowly became clear that Nathaniel was the better sword swine.
Your footwork is good. I've never seen anything like it. Such grace with the blade, too. Like watching the froth slowly rise in a yogurt-based milkshake.
As Nathaniel majestically circled his opponent, looking for weakness in his guard, a scream from the east abruptly ended their fight. It was the undead. Their ranks freshly bolstered since the trichinosis epidemic of the years prior, and they were coming from the massive graveyard next to town, seeking to kill more townsfolk who would then be placed into the graveyard. Because you see, the citizens of Porkalore are not very bright. With a sworn promise from every townie not to try and eat Nathaniel if he saved the village, the two duelists put a temporary hold on their fight.
Okay, yeah, not a problem.
And then cut their way through the countless skeletons, ghosts, and goblin zombies toward the graveyard where the source of the massive necromantic power was clearly to be found. Chapter 11. The Least Dangerous Game. As the duo fought their way through the graveyard, fighting mini-bosses on the way that would later become common enemy types, they came across the entrance to a particularly large and ancient crypt, marked as such by the sheer volume of bird droppings, and upon entering the crypt, fought their way through a labyrinth dungeon of pure, indefensible evil, the kind of pure evil where you can't even invite your own mother to visit for fear of her harsh rebukes towards how you've really let the place go, and how you probably can never expect to have any company over except your friends from high school. Upon moving dauntlessly through a particularly challenging room involving a two-person synchronized dancing puzzle, Nathaniel and Faralanzar quickly found themselves in the chamber of the Lich King.
This had better not be another "this has all been an illusion" ruse. That was totally uncool.
Who dares visit the Lich King unannounced?
It is I, Faralanzar Williamsburg, swordsman of Porkalore, kicker of...
The hearts of men are greedy and delicious. That silent spell ability is by far the best feat in the book. Wait. Hey, you're not dead or undead. Who are you? Curses! I've actually heard of you, Nathaniel Belmontesquieu. And more importantly, I've been forewarned of your impressive combat prowess. While my minions may not be the sharpest tools in the shed, I pride myself on my cunning mental abilities. It would be a shame for you to simply kill me, in the permanent sense, without ever finding out if you had the mental capacity to, say, outwit me. What I'm proposing, my dear little grunter, is a game of intellect, a game of skill. Sure, I suppose Cat's Cradle works. Yes, that sounds good too. If you win, I agree to renounce my evil ways, help you defeat Cook Dracula, and live a long, peaceful, and healthy life under the alias of... how about Stan Lee? Or William Shatner? It doesn't matter. It begins!
Chapter 12, Out of the Dying Pan.
It ends.
After Nathaniel schooled the evil Lich in a game of Cat's Cradle, using, of course, his lucky red string, the Lich reluctantly agreed to renounce his evil ways, to give up his life of necromancy, and start a new peaceful life in a faraway land, under an assumed name.
Boars truly are the most intelligent of animals. Curses. Well, since I've renounced my evil ways, we certainly can't take the Scalavator out of my top-secret volcano dungeon lair, now can we? Because that would require necromancy. I did mention that we are indeed in a top-secret volcano dungeon lair, right? Because we totally are. Well, it would be cool, except for the fact that we're taking the stairs like chumps. I'm not complaining. It is indeed air-conditioned and such. I'm just... yeah, right. Onward then. I'll tell you some of Cook Dracula's more embarrassing secrets while we walk. Because we'll be here walking for quite a while. Yeah, I used to go to school with him. Wizard school.
Chapter 13, Into the Deep Fryer.
You know, I'm pretty sure his brother-in-law is a count or something. Chocula, I think it was. Anyway.
As Nathaniel and the Lich reached the precipice of the volcano, a glorious sunrise was taking place.
Ooh, pretty. What was I saying?
This would have been perfectly normal, except for the fact that it wasn't actually a sunrise, but a giant angler glowworm, which uses a large, glowing, sunrise-like protrusion to catch its prey.
No! Run, little grunter, before it gets...
As the giant worm ingested them, Nathaniel couldn't help but wonder why he'd never heard of such a colossal and legendary beast before. This concludes Side 1. Please turn the tape or record over to Side 2 to continue Legend of the Boar Knight, Part 2. Thank you.